All right, folks, the time is 6:30, so we're going to get started. And Victoria, if you don't mind just letting people in as they come through the waiting room, that would be great. All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to your first day of class. Congratulations on taking the first step in this journey with us through our boot camp. Today, we're going to be focusing on building our classroom community, finding our common ground, and forming a collaborative learning environment with each other. This is your U of T SES Cybersecurity Bootcamp. By the end of this class, we're going to have our first lesson that's going to get us acquainted directly with the material that we're all looking forward to, right? We're going to get into the nitty-gritty, and you'll get a taste of what it's going to be like going through the rest of the bootcamp. But before that, we're going to take some time to introduce you to some of the very important details that you need to know for the rest of the course. Now, this bootcamp is provided through a partnership. So the bootcamp and the program is being delivered to you by edX. edX has partnered with the University of Toronto SES to provide the program. The university itself reviews the curriculum that we teach, in addition to reviewing us, all of your instructors. And further, you have a certification upon graduation that comes from the U of T School of Continuing Studies. And so that's what it will say on your slip of paper once you graduate. On the bootcamp side, of course, edX manages the day-to-day operations. It's partnered with hundreds of universities to deliver this sort of thing and deliver supplemental training solutions for individual learners and to work hand in hand with us and you to deliver the platform that you need to succeed. So things that edX manages are the enrollment of students, communicating with staff and students, and career advising during and after the course. Also, we have our engineering team at edX that builds and maintains our lab environments, our bootcamp spot portal, and other features that we're going to learn about, like Expert AI and Ask BCS. Speaking of your instructional team, hello, my name is Omar. I am your instructor for the bootcamp. I am the second most important person that you're going to see throughout your time here, because the first most important person that you'll see is Sarer. She's your student success advisor. So she's going to be in constant communication with you throughout your 6 months. She's your primary source of support for all non-course related content concerns. And she's like your partner through your bootcamp experience. Okay. So if you want to find Sarer, I'll show you very quickly. All you have to do is in Slack, and I believe everybody can see my Slack now. In the search bar at the top of Slack, search for Student Success Advisor. And she's going to pop up, right? And it will say Sarer. Okay, so Sarer is your go-to person for support related to the course. Okay. On the other hand, if you need any help with tech support, with homework, with curriculum, you go to me, right? I'm the instructor, or you go to one of the TAs who will introduce shortly. Sarer handles things like your attendance or your tuition if you have questions about that and that sort of thing, right? So you also have, sorry, I just one more note about Sarer. She's going to be stopping by our class on Monday. Right now, she has several classes on the fly, so she couldn't be here today. She's going to stop by on Monday to introduce herself properly. In the meantime, you can find her contact information in the email you would have received before the start of our class. Okay. So again, reach out to her for anything you need, which is not related to course content. Okay. Course content comes to myself or one of the TAs. Now, about me, my name is Omar. I have a bachelor's in IT and networking and IT security. I'm a certified cloud security professional, and I hold the Security Plus certification, which we're going to learn more about once we start our first lecture. Okay. So I have a couple industry certifications, and fun fact about me, when I was in university, I worked part-time as a stuntman to make money. Okay. Now, with that being said, I will hand it over to our TAs to introduce themselves. We have 4 awesome TAs. One of them is Kunal. He's not here today. So subbing for him is Samriti. She'll be here this week, and then Kunal will be back next week. Okay. But Samriti, if you don't mind, just saying hi and letting them know.
Hi everyone. Sorry, I just realized I was on mute. Hi everyone, my name is Samriddhi. So as Omar said, I will be here for just this week. And I'm a postgraduate in engineering and I have worked in the different IT fields for the past 7 years. And 2 years back, I get into cybersecurity. And it has been an awesome journey till here. And it's just nice to meet you all. And I would like to talk about one fun factor, which is that I love road trips and the drives, but I don't drive myself. Yeah. It's so nice to meet you all. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Alex, how about you?
Right. Okay. So my name is Alex Doku. This is my, I think, fourth cohort. I have, I think, about 20 years of experience in the IT industry. I hold a couple of industry certifications that I'm not going to mention. Omar is the man I mean, he's the man on the bridge, so all attention on him. Fun fact, I love grilling and it's summertime, so you can join me when you have time.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
All right.
I'm going to hold you to that. We're going to have steak later on.
Right.
And Vivian?
Hey everyone, I'm Vivian. I have my Security Plus. Fun fact about me is I did this boot camp as well. I was a student just like you guys, and this is my third cohort teaching.
Thank you. And Victoria?
Hey guys, my name is Victoria. This is my second cohort. My education is Bachelor of Science in Physics was my background. And then I work in IT. I work with outsource in India. That would be maybe a fun fact for someone. And I have a management job.
Awesome. Thank you. So between the five of us, we have a lot of different experience and different lengths of career, but we will definitely have the knowledge that we need to help you along this course, right? So any questions you have in terms of course content or things outside the course content, you can use Slack to post them if they're not urgent, and we'll get around to sating your curiosity, right? We'll talk more about questions during class hours as we move along into our sort of section about virtual learning. But first, we're going to talk about how we organize your resources and support. Okay, so like we mentioned before, you have a SSA, your Student Success Advisor, okay, and that's Sarer. She's going to help you with your attendance and course requirements. She's going to help you navigate concerns you might have about your eligibility to graduate, for example, and she can help you with your time management and success planning. Then you have your instructional team, which is us, right? We'll help you with academic concerns and support, right? If you're stuck on something, you need help with a certain question. We'll host office hours. Okay, so each day before class, typically class starts at 6:30. Before that time, at 5:45, we start office hours. Okay, so you have 45 minutes of office hours before class and 30 minutes after class, which are optional time for you to attend, ask us questions, get help with your homework, so on and so forth. Okay. So those are office hours, and we grade your project work. You also have central support. So BCS is the portal that you use to access the bootcamp content. You should have all been acquainted with it by now, because I believe you had to do a module 0, right, as sort of an onboarding. Okay, so you've all seen BCS. If you have trouble accessing your classroom, right, central support can help you with that. Okay, and Sarer can point you in the right direction to submit your tickets. And if there are technical issues or errors when you submit an assignment, that will go to central support as well. Now, aside from support, you have a bunch of resources that are sort of unique to our bootcamp. So we have something called Expert 24/7, which is an AI tool. Okay. It is available all day, every day, and it can answer questions about the course material. Okay, it's an AI learning assistant that has been trained on our curriculum. So it can assist you with general questions like understanding different terminology or explaining some code to you that you may have written or was part of an assignment. Okay. We'll show you how to access that at the end of class today through BCS. Okay. You also have something called Ask BCS, which is where you can access learning assistants who are real people standing by to answer questions that you might have about your course content. So Ask BCS is actually in Slack at the moment, right? You submit a question to them, it's going to pop up a custom Slack channel for you, and they will get back to you within 25 to 30 minutes. Those learning assistants can also jump on a Zoom call with you if they need to show you something or you want to show them something that you're working on, okay? Again, office hours, right? So like we talked about, held before and after class. There are designated time for us to answer your questions and give you one-on-one guidance if you need it. And you also have tutoring. So in BCS, you can access the tutoring scheduler, right? It is limited due to staffing constraints, right? There's only so many tutors and many students, but the idea is you can book one-on-one tutoring sessions, 50 minutes at a time, where an expert will help you with whatever you need, right? Homework, course content, project work, okay? And the idea is you come prepared with your questions and they'll help you through, all right? So I'll pause here. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question. It's
Sure.
not really related to the course, but I was just interested in what kind of stunts you did.
What kind of stunts? Yeah, it was martial arts related stuff. No vehicles and no
So
fire and no animals.
is it in movies or just for like some shows?
It was a TV show and one movie project. I don't think they actually made the movie.
Nice.
They were trying to get funding. Yes, we have a hand up. Is it Mohammed?
You can call me Haroon.
Haroon.
My question is, I mean, I had this question to the person when I initially started before starting the bootcamp, is that how does a degree that is not in information technology or computer science, how do you complement the bootcamp course with some outlying degree such as business or management, you know, because they are not complementary, but because this is very technical and you have to know A to Z of all the glossary terms in a computing system. You may have to work with hardware, software, coding, this and that. So how will someone who studied business and the bootcamp will complement their degree in order to become an IT professional in the cybersecurity field? That's my question.
That's a great question, and I think it's a very common one. I'll gently correct you in that they're not. It's not that they don't complement each other. A lot of the leaders in the organization that I work at and have worked at in the cybersecurity space have degrees in things like art or humanities, or they were a lawyer, right? And as we're going to learn as we go through the bootcamp, cybersecurity itself is not just about the technical details. It's about the intersection between the business and its goals and the security of the organization. So there's no hindrance at all at having a degree which is non-technical or not computer science related. And then the last thing I'll say to that is a lot of the world of cybersecurity talent and hiring revolves around the certifications, right? So you having a degree in something that's non-technical really just sort of adds flavor to what kind of work that you'll do later on, right? But if you can get certified, then you're qualified to do the job in many cases.
May I just jump in to
Of
add?
course.
Omar, thank you. So Harun, if you have a degree in business and you do have a technical understanding of a process, it is absolutely necessary for a person who works in technical field. you cannot guide, understand process if you do not understand what people are working with, what issues they're facing, and also if you do not, so you will not gain respect trying to manage someone who you have no idea what they are doing, right? So you do need technical background to manage people in the technical field. And yes, your management skills will be very, very important, but they will be sufficient without you having that background knowledge. Okay?
Yep, that's very fair. And the idea here is that we build you up to start gaining that technical knowledge.
Yeah, I just will jump in and say one sentence. It's just the technical aspect, the lab, and the critical problem solving aspect that is based on technical, codings and terminal issues. That is what is most concerning for me. That's all.
Gotcha. Well, I'll put it this way. I've had students come to the bootcamp in the past that couldn't find the close button on the web browser. And by the end, they were writing code for their Linux machine and, right? So there's a lot that we can get done in 6 months. Okay, so we'll move on. If you have other questions, feel free to drop them in the Slack channel and we'll come around to them after the break. Let's quickly go through the resource guide. 1 second here. Okay, so you received a welcome session. You would have received an email titled Bootcamp Orientation, please read, right? So your welcome session and resource guide are linked in there. If you have common questions about the structure of the bootcamp or the graduation requirements, most of that should be in there. So you can revisit that whenever you need. And for other class-related information, you should have a look at Module 0 in BCS or Canvas, as it's called here. And for anything else, you can ask Sorare, right? She's your go-to. All right, let's quickly go through the course requirements. So it's a boot camp, but you do have to meet some thresholds in order for you to successfully graduate and receive your certificate. So on the syllabus, we have details on attendance expectations, missed homework assignments, project completion, and tuition requirements that you can find in BCS. And then the SSA or enrollment agreement will help you out, right? So the SSA will help you out. If you find that you can't meet those requirements or that the bootcamp isn't right for you, you can ask Sorare or refer to the enrollment agreement for drop deadlines. Okay, it's not uncommon to have a few students drop in the first week because they realize that it just wasn't what they needed right now, or they can't commit the energy that they need to it, because as we'll go over in a second here, right, it is a significant time commitment. And I believe most people will have, sorry, let me go back. I believe most people will have discussed this already with Sorare or somebody else throughout the onboarding process. In general, you'll spend at least 20 hours a week on the bootcamp, if not more. So from the top, what to expect from our class and from the bootcamp in general. These are the things that you need to succeed. Be on time to class, okay? As you can see, we've been moving through these slides fairly quickly, right? If you're 10 or 15 minutes late, you could miss a section, which may end up leaving you confused, right? So be on time, be honest and respectful. The course content is difficult at times, but if you're struggling, just be honest and people will help you, right? We're all here to help. Don't resort to cheating. I can't tell you how many times people have thought they were like smarter than the system, and they submitted an assignment that they had plagiarized, and then we call them out on it, and they resubmit assignment that had been plagiarized from a different site this time, and back and forth, and you only get so many slaps on the wrist, right? So be honest and respectful. Submit your homework on time and projects on time. Respond to the weekly survey. Each week you'll get a survey in BCS, which basically asks you to rate how you're feeling about the pace of the course and the delivery of the course and the applicability of the course content. And to be honest, that only benefits us, right? But in the long run, it benefits you because it lets us know how you're feeling, right? If I get a weekly survey come back and everybody in the class says I'm talking too fast or I'm confusing you, right? That lets me kind of dial things back or slow down or expand more. Okay. So the weekly survey is helpful for everybody. Okay. Stay focused and pay attention. Class pace is very fast, right? We're trying to cram a lot of information and learning into 6 months. Okay. That feeds into our next point, which, as I mentioned, spend at least 20 hours a week outside of class. This is going to be more or less for some people, depending on your aptitude. I would say use the first couple weeks of class to make a judgment on how much practice you actually need. As you'll see when we get into our lecture, there is a lot of different content as well that we get through. Different subjects that we study, and some will be challenging and some will be easy for you, right? So, you know, you're all adults, and I trust you to use your judgment and do what works for you. Okay. And the last thing is ask for help when you need it. Okay. We will talk about other tips for success. Okay. But asking for help is really important, especially in this sort of asynchronous environment, right? So if you need help with something, ask in the channel, ask your study buddies, just leave it somewhere where we can see it, because if I come across a question that's been left in the channel, then I'll just throw you an answer, or you can DM me directly, or you can ask Sorare, or you can ask one of the TAs, right? So, and again, the code of conduct can be found in your enrollment agreement. Okay. The last thing I'll say about that is that the graduation requirements are in here from Sorare somewhere. Okay, so I'll find it for you, and I will bump everybody on that message, just so that you have it sort of front and center. Okay. Now, some tips for success. Time management is the biggest thing about the boot camp. Okay. Like we said, 6 months, super heavy with content. Okay. So use a calendar to plan out your weeks, dedicate time on the weekend to do your homework, right? Most weeks we have homework that you get 1 whole week to do, right? If you can knock it out on the weekend, then you avoid overlapping your homework with next week's homework, right? Because it does not stop coming. Okay. So every week homework, and you don't want to spend 12 hours on it, right? Dedicate some time where you can focus, get it taken care of, ask for help when you need it. Take advantage of office hours. Okay, you can spend 8 hours on the weekend troubleshooting error in your Linux VM, or you can show up to office hours and we'll solve it for you in 5 minutes, right? Make your choice. Form study groups. This one is not just because forming a study group will help you get answers to questions and help you with homework, but these study groups become people who you're connected with, right? Forming a professional network. In a few years, these people are all going to be cybersecurity professionals like yourself, hopefully, if you're successful, right? And you may be depending on each other for opportunities or sharing knowledge, or, you know, so form study groups. Ask questions. I feel like that goes without saying. In general, if we're in the middle of a lecture, I'll ask you to raise your hand on Zoom to ask a question. Okay, so if you're on Zoom, there should be a little button in the bottom right, that says raise hand, right? I think it's under reactions. Okay, so you click reactions, and then there's a button that says raise hand. And that's going to put a little pop-up on my screen that tells me that you've got a question, right? You can also put it in the chat and I'll see that, right? But raising your hand and then unmuting yourself to ask your question is great, okay? Next, stay engaged. If you're not talking, please mute your microphone and reduce distractions around you. For day one, everybody's doing great, right? Usually there's a few people with what we call a hot mic, right? And I can hear like a TV in the background or somebody talking, or, so great. Engage on Slack throughout class, right? So like I said, if you've got a question that we couldn't get to because we're trying to keep things moving and keep us on schedule, use Slack, right? Use Slack also to find the links that you need for the content for the day. Okay. Set up a second monitor. That really helps so that you can watch the lecture while you're working on the homework, or you can watch the lecture while you're reading other material or take notes, or, so second monitor will help. And finally, read instructions and use your glossary and cheat sheets. Okay. I have a couple more to add. First, review the additional reading material that we provide as class continues, right? So for each week or each lesson throughout the week, there's going to be something like a news article or a wiki page or an IT article that will recommend that you read. And those can be very powerful because they can sort of take what you've learned in concept in class and put them into a real world view, right? And you can see how your learning in class really relates to something that has actually happened, okay? And the next thing that I'll add is that you should preview the class material before class so that you know what to expect, and review the material after class once these solutions are available. Okay, so I'll very quickly, because I know Victoria has one to share, I'll very quickly just show you GitLab and what I mean by that. So GitLab is where we keep all of the course content and where you can access it. The structure of GitLab goes like this. We have this sort of folder called uTor Vert Cyber PT 07 2024, right? You're going to see in here a bunch of folders which are numbered by the week. Okay, so next week you're going to see a folder in here called O2, right? And then O3, O4, and so on. Each folder is going to have 3 folders inside it, one for each day of the week. Okay, so today's class is 1.1, which Alex, I believe, reminded everybody of, right, before class started. Today is 1.1, and we've got a student guide called the Cybersecurity Mindset. So if you click into day 1 of week 1, you'll find a few things in here. You're going to find a cheat sheet, which again, you should have a look at, and you'll find a student guide. Student guide is great because it's going to tell you what to expect. It's going to have all the links to everything you need. And as we talk through the content, the student guide is going to align with my slides, right? So if you had to step away for a few minutes and then you're like, oh, I missed what Omar was talking about, you can just scroll up slightly and see that thing that you missed in case it was important, right? Or you can take a note. And here's an example of a cheat sheet, right? Like a glossary. It could contain code that's good to know, or key terms, or that sort of thing. Okay. So use GitLab, and I would say spend a few minutes after class today just clicking around it and kind of understanding which button does what, because you'll be spending a lot of time in GitLab. Okay. Now I'll pass it to Victoria. Victoria, if you want to share your tip for success.
Thank you, Omar. So I was asked to share my tip, and my tip would be something that Omar already mentioned, but I just want to stress it out. I find it very important to stay positive during the class, and you will face a lot of pressure. And we are going through material that is condensed, and doesn't mean you have to be an expert in everything. You would have to pick and choose which one is your favorite and which one is your comfortable zone, and you will specialize in that later. And use a team power to learn and make connections. Use this time to get to know each other, and you have now currently a pool of 70 people that trying to achieve the same thing. And you'll be surprised in 2-3 years and 5 years where you can find each other. Okay, and try to make a best impression, be best yourself, and be a person that everybody would want to reach out when they asked, we're hiring an engineer, we're hiring an intern. So be this person that other people would want to reach out to. This industry is very tight-knit. I find that everybody knows everyone. And if you don't know someone, you always know someone who knows someone. At one point, you work with someone, you cross path with someone, and if it's not your first connection, it's second or third. Okay, I will get everybody who's in industry challenge me on that. And you will be part of this pool, and you only have one chance to make an impression. So use it. This is a great chance, and good luck, everybody.
Thank you, Victoria. Like she said, use it or lose it, right? You're here and you're going to be spending all this time with people, doing activities together, practicing together. So make a good impression, become reliable to each other, because as she said, that's going to be your network going forward. The last thing that I'll add to that is in terms of success, okay? Having taught this boot camp several times by now, either as a TA or as the instructor, the students who find the most success later, who get their certification the fastest, who find a job the fastest, who move up the fastest, they're not the students that started the boot camp and were prodigies, right? And who knew how to write code and were technically apt. They're the people that collaborated, right? That held together a study group and made a good impression, okay? So keep that in mind as we go forward. Yes, Omer?
Hi. So I have a question about, you said forming study groups. So I would just wanted to know, how do we go about doing that?
So in Slack, you can create like group DMs. And so then your study group will live in Slack. You can use Zoom along with Slack to host sessions like this where you can talk to each other, study, do activities, that kind of thing.
Okay.
A lot of people like to use Discord to set up a server where you can stay in touch with each other and study and exchange knowledge as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions before we move on?
Yes.
Emmanuel?
How big is the group should be? For
We have 69 students enrolled today.
oh my God. Like for the work groups, what size should they be to be effective?
A
Like
study group,
Yes.
usually the ones that I see are 15 people, right?
15, eh?
If you have a study group that's more than that, you may have 40 people in the study group, but I find that only a subset of those people will be active and contributing, right?
Right.
So 15 is a decent size in terms of what we're actually going to work on, right? We'll have activities and project work and homework. Anything that's done in groups, it'll be a different group size depending on the thing that we're working on. Okay.
Mm.
So yeah, that's not to say that if you form a study group and you reach 30 people, don't tell people not to join your group, right? Because again, making connections is really important. Okay,
Yes,
Armand?
I'm
Oh,
concerned
sorry.
if you form a group, some are quicker to get it, some are a little bit slower. So
Yeah,
the slow ones might hinder the ones that are pick it up pretty fast.
yeah, every group is different. It depends on who sort of emerges as the leader of the group. And we can only hope that the person who emerges as the leader of a group is patient and, accommodating for people that may need a little more help. I've seen some study groups where somebody is just blazing through everything and leaving everybody else behind.
Yeah.
That doesn't typically work very well for very long, right? Because, well, now the people that are left behind, they have to form their own study group to catch up, right?
Mm.
So I don't think size has as much to do with it as it is, the type of people that you're working with.
What do you think? What part of the boot camp, like beginning, middle, or at the end, gets harder?
It's all hard. The first
It's
week
all
is going to
hard.
be a little easier.
Uh-huh.
Okay. But after that, we have like 6 weeks of Linux and then 4 weeks of Windows, and then we start hacking, and then we do Sims. We have projects scattered throughout. So I'll be
Oh.
honest with you, it's not easy. None of it's easy, right? But like I said, we have a very high. I've noticed a lot of change in students who come through, right?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Exciting. All right.
The last thing I'll add before we move to Armand, the students that I find don't graduate the boot camp, it's not because it was too hard. It's because they didn't manage their time well. Because I can see who's doing their homework each week. It's the students that waited 4 weeks to start doing the first homework assignment, right? And then now they have 3 homework assignments that are due at the same time, and they're just behind on everything and they can't catch up. That's usually that's the kiss of death, right? Okay, Armand?
Hi Omar, thank you for having us. So my question is that I have some problems with my stack and other software that was told us in the in the places. I forgot the name about it, but I have some problem with the Slack and all of that. Who is the person I can ask them about it to guide me to set it up well so I can keep up with it? Because with the email and stuff, sometimes happens. Technology play with us sometimes, So who is the person here I can, keep up?
Sorare will be able to help you,
Alright.
for sure. She may not be the fastest way to get help just because she's dealing with so many people. So after class, let me have a look at what you're dealing with, and maybe I can get you onboarded to a couple things.
Okay, appreciate. Thank you.
Yeah, but if you can email Sorare as well,
Mhm.
she will see what she can do on her time.
Okay, how can I get access to the email and all the stuff from her?
Okay, so you don't have anything from her yet?
No, because for orientation email, I didn't receive any email. I checked it right away,
Yeah.
but I didn't receive any email, and I think there is something wrong here about my email, so that's why
Okay,
I'm trying to
gotcha.
fix it before anything.
Okay, I'll reach out to her then, and we'll sort it out.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Let me just make a note.
Thanks.
Okay, and Benjamin?
Hi, I have 2 questions. So
Yeah.
the first one is going to be about Linux, and I was wondering if we're going to be using virtual machines, or are we going to be running it off of like a website?
Virtual machines.
Virtual machines, okay.
Yeah.
And my second question was, I was looking at the requirements to pass the course, and I noticed you guys use the American grading system, and I was wondering why that was the choice.
The grading is done by a central team. Whether it's American or Canadian, though, it's a pass-fail course. Right. So if you receive a 50% on your projects, then you'll have met the bar for each project, and that 50% is just based on the rubric we have, which outlines what is a successful submission and so on. Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Shad?
Hi, yeah. So going back to, I guess, how you were talking about a homework per week. Now, is there anything we can expect on like a daily basis? So something we would have to do after class to have ready for the next class, that kind of stuff?
No. So if you show up on class and you finish the activities that we do during class, you'll be ready to do your homework at the end of the week. Between classes, there's no overnight activity or, anything like that.
Oh, okay, sweet. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yep. Harun?
I just wanted to ask, I use Apple, Mac,
No problem.
iMac, so that should be fine with virtual machine, correct?
Yes. Sorry, I'll clarify about the virtual machines. We won't be running the virtual machines on our hardware. They're going to be through Azure Lab Service or the edX data center, which is maybe another version of Azure Lab Service, but we'll talk about it more in the next half of class. Okay,
Yeah,
but there's
but
no
Apple
hardware
product is
dependency.
fine.
Yeah, there's no hardware dependency on your side. And Eric?
Hello. I was wondering about the second monitor question.
Mhm.
During classes, will we be following along with any of the examples you're giving? So will we need to have GitLab open or any of the virtual machines open at the same time with our notes and this lecture?
Yes, not often, but every once in a while, we'll do a thing where I'm doing a demo and I say, you should follow along with the demo on your virtual machine. But I'm mindful of that, and I usually pause for 15, 20 seconds in between steps so that you can catch up. So it would be helpful, but we have sort of fail safes in place to catch you up if you miss the whole thing, or, make sure that nobody gets left behind.
Perfect. Thank you.
About the second monitor, it can help, but for example, I can teach class on one monitor where I'm sharing a screen and then I have a note and then I have, so if you organize your space, it's totally doable. Okay, so let's swap over to our lecture for today because this was just our bootcamp introduction. So give me a minute and I'll swap over my screen share. All right, there we go. So with our introduction out of the way, welcome to your first lesson of our bootcamp. The first thing that we're going to talk about today is CompTIA. Okay, we're introducing to CompTIA because the bootcamp curriculum is aligned with the CompTIA Security Plus curriculum. And after you complete the bootcamp, you receive an exam voucher to take the Security Plus or Network Plus or Linux Plus or Server, blah, 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 one of these CompTIA exams. Okay, so we're talking about CompTIA because it's aligned with what we're learning. So when you complete the course, you receive an exam voucher of your choice and the Cert Master Practice tool. As some context, CompTIA is a certifying authority in the technology world. They create the Security Plus certification. They test against it. They come up with a curriculum, that sort of thing, right? So having CompTIA on your resume is definitely a big plus. Some people will have very strong opinions about the different certifying bodies, right? I find that people in this field have strong opinions about almost everything. Okay, but CompTIA is still a great way to start your journey. Okay, so the Cert Master tool, which we mentioned, is an adaptive assessment tool and a certificate training companion that helps you prepare to take your CompTIA exam. We are going to actually use it in class to sort of get you warmed up to it at the end of our bootcamp. Because the idea is after the bootcamp, you use the CompTIA Cert Master tool to prepare you to write the exam, right? So you learn stuff here, you practice it after the bootcamp, you take the exam, okay? So you're going to get access to that after you graduate, and we'll do a trial run of it together. The exam voucher, like I mentioned, lets you take one of these exams. I may be biased, but I recommend you take the Security Plus exam. I think it aligns the closest with what we learn, and I think it's the most direct way to get your foot in the door in terms of getting a cybersecurity job, if that's what you're interested in. Your career director will help you decide which voucher is best for you based on your skill set and professional goals. Career director being one of the different career resources which the bootcamp offers, and Sorare can help you get in touch with those people when you want to. And like we mentioned, you'll receive that when you graduate. That voucher that you receive when you graduate is valid for 12 months. Okay, so you should graduate, book your exam for some time in the next 12 months afterwards and take the exam. Okay, so that's about CompTIA. Let's look at what we're going to cover in today's class. So we're going to talk about the course structure and the general direction of our program. We're going to talk about high-level security strategies and the tools that we cover in class. We're going to define cybersecurity, and we're going to learn about the CIA triad, which is one of the fundamental concepts in cybersecurity. So we need to discuss the rising cyber threat. And it leads us to ask the question, why is cybersecurity such a desired skill these days? And there are a few reasons. Reason one is the explosive growth in dependence of IT. So nearly every personal, social, and commercial aspect of our lives makes contact with vulnerable IT infrastructure. The dependence on these IT systems has grown immensely in recent years. And to simplify, vulnerable IT structure. We're going to understand what that means in more detail as the course goes on. For now, IT infrastructure is just stuff that makes our information system work, right? For example, Zoom, we use Zoom to deliver our class. So we're at the mercy of Zoom's IT infrastructure, the stuff that makes Zoom work, right? There's web servers, databases, different kinds of gateways and load balancers and so on, okay? So we're going to learn more about that later on. You don't have to worry about the details just yet. Reason number 2, more users, aka targets, are using more connected devices. Okay, so people, more people than ever are logged into connected devices, and this is often for the majority of their waking hours and even their sleeping hours. Okay. Does anybody want to raise their hand and give me an example of a situation where you're vulnerable to a cybersecurity threat because of your personal device? That was fast. Omer?
Yeah, so when you're accessing even your social media, if you post that you're on vacation and you're somewhere else, then that's also like a security threat because people can tell exactly where you are or that you're not home. And as far as cybersecurity, I mean, if it's networking way, if you're connected, let's say to let's say your banking account, and someone sends you an email that mimics your banking that's coming from your bank, and you click on it and it takes you to a different site that looks like your bank, and you put in your banking information there, so they get all your login information and they can actually go into your banking account and access your bank account.
For sure. Yeah. So the phishing email is a
Yes.
huge one, right? I think 70% of breaches in corporate environments happen because of phishing. Okay. And Omer did a great job describing it, but we're going to go into it in more detail later on so that we all understand what phishing is. I see a lot of hands going up. In the interest of time, we're just going to do 2 more and then we'll move on. Okay. And feel free to leave yours in the chat if you want to share. Okay. Harun?
Oh, I believe that maybe a friend who you don't know if their account was hacked by someone else, pretending to be my friend and asking me for help to get access to their login information. And if I click on the link, then it may download a software in my own device that can take advantage of my device and all the information that's in it, and
Okay.
leading me to get into huge trouble.
Okay. So yeah, it would be a pretty sophisticated piece of malware to get past the controls that are usually in place. But yeah, now that we're more connected and more active on our devices, there are a lot more attack vectors for bad actors to deliver malware onto your machine, right? And is it Nana? Great.
Yeah, got it right. I would say connecting to unsecure public Wi-Fi, that can usually leave your system vulnerable to attacks.
Yeah, so it depends. There's different technologies in play at different layers, but in general, yeah, we say not to connect to unsecured public Wi-Fi or Wi-Fi using a weak security protocol. Okay, because that can open you up to different sort of attacks like snooping or man in the middle. Okay. Great. So let's move on. The third reason for why the cyber threat is rising and we need professionals in this field is that cyber criminals are getting increasingly sophisticated and aggressive, and they're launching attacks with greater audacity. Okay. They're more disruptive than before. We're seeing hacking go from being a kind of, hacking started as a sort of harmless thing, really, right? One of the first viruses on the DARPANET was malware, which spread to computers and did nothing except put a message on the screen, which said, "I'm the creeper, catch me if you can." Okay. And for a long time, we saw like lone wolf hackers and, people doing stuff for fun or for clout or for money. But it's become a a much bigger thing, right? We see organized cybercrime who make millions and millions of dollars by extorting businesses, holding their data captive, right, through ransomware schemes. And it's been very lucrative for them. Okay, so they're getting more sophisticated, more aggressive, more disruptive. And so we need people to work on the other side of the fence to defend against that. Okay, and in the same vein, bad actors are investing a lot in their hacking capabilities. Okay, so the cyber criminals themselves are getting more organized. There are, organized crime and also nation states which act really unpredictably in terms of the way that they carry out attacks. Okay? For example, nation state hackers. In 2010, there was a famous hack called Stuxnet. Okay, it was a nation state backed cyber attack, right? So imagine all the money and the talent and the malicious intent that a 3-letter agency can muster. All that effort spent on performing a hack, and they can pull off crazy things. Stuxnet was a sophisticated worm designed to target Iran's nuclear program. We believe now that it was a effort by the United States and Israel to disrupt Iran's uranium enrichment centrifuges. So they set back Iran's nuclear ambitions by sabotaging their program. So the worm would basically work its way into the logic controllers for these centrifuges and change the rate that they spin at. So they sent data back to the scientists that looked normal, but the machines were operating totally out of whack. Okay, so it took them a long time to figure out that something was even wrong, and that caused major setbacks to the nuclear program. Okay, so that sort of effort, and you could even say that sort of creativity required to pull something off like that, as cyber criminals become more organized and more focused on the prize, which is usually money, right? They can pull off crazy things like that too. Okay, we can do a whole lecture about nation state involvement and the sort of top secret techniques that Edward Snowden revealed that these people have at their disposal. But that's sort of outside the scope of our course for now, right? Cybersecurity 101, not cyber warfare. Okay, and reason number 5, there just aren't enough skilled cybersecurity professionals to fill all the available jobs, right? The 2023 Fortinet Cybersecurity Skills Gap Global Research Report is a report based on responses obtained from their email survey to IT and cybersecurity decision makers, right? Managers, hiring managers, senior managers, directors, right? People that make decisions at organizations. They conducted that in 2022, and 84% of organizations experienced one or more breach in the past year. 84%. Okay. 90% of leaders at these organizations prefer to hire people with tech-focused certifications. 90%. That is up from 81% in 2021. Okay, so the demand has grown. 68% of organizations indicate that they face additional risk because of the cybersecurity skills shortage at their company. More than half of them, 56%, say they struggle to find talent. And another half, 54%, struggle to retain talent. Okay, so there's definitely a need for qualified professionals, right? Okay. Let's pause here very quickly. Do we have any questions before we move on? Yes, Eric.
Sorry, quick one. I know it will depend on which corporation you're working for, which institution, but is there any liability ever involved? Because if we're going to be the front line against these kind of malicious attacks, can we be held liable if these attacks go through?
Not usually, no. So, for example, I've worked in a SOC, which is handling the front line of defense in a lot of cases, right? Detecting threats and mitigating them. Usually there are fail safes involved, and especially as an entry level person, it's not your responsibility, right? If you go out of your way to cover something up because you made a mistake, for example, you may be facing serious consequences, but I don't think you'll find yourself in a position like that for a very long time. Alex, do you have an opinion on that? I know you have a lot of experience in that space.
Well, I think we can go with your explanation for now. I think as we go along, I mean, other parts of stuff into place, and then start adding on to it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, so it's nothing you have to worry about in the immediate term. Riley?
Yeah, you mentioned that roughly half, if not a little over half of companies were unable to, there's a high turnover in cybersecurity. So I'm sure out of some of the instructors here, you have experience working in this field. What are some examples that would lead to this high turnover? Because such a high turnover rate would typically lead you to believe, is this the right industry to get into, right?
Yeah, turnover doesn't necessarily mean that people are leaving for bad reasons. If you look at my sort of track record in terms of career, I've done a bit of job hopping, and so my company would report a high turnover, but it's not because, I hated my field or whatever. I just had better opportunities open up. I think this field opens itself up to a good upward progression, right? And that's why that's a part of the reason for some of the turnover. But yeah, I'll be honest, there are a lot of jobs in this field that are not easy, right? Some of them, you need people to staff a 24/7 operations center. Okay, that's not for everybody, right? Some people struggle with different aspects of the stress that they might deal with if they're handling sensitive subject matter all the time, right? Yeah, I can't say for sure what causes the high turnover, but it's not always a bad thing, right?
Yeah, you're saying that a high percentage of the fraction of people that would line up with the turnover is typically because there's a high demand. So because of that, people are typically progressing through their field, and there's a bit of a vacuum because of that. So yeah, thanks for your answer.
Yeah, no problem. And Shad?
Yeah, so just making sure I understood, I guess the basis of this boot camp. I'm assuming that I believe you quoted an 80% employer, I guess they're looking for technically or skillfully inclined people, and I guess that's what this course is aimed at, getting the technical people who can get in there, get the job done, and be functional on the floor operationally, right?
Yep, that's it. Emmanuel?
Yeah, what does the AI fit into this? Because their AI can be trained to train machines to detect attacks or something like that, right?
Yeah, so the AI technology that we're dealing with right now is not mature enough to replace security analysts. Right now, we're at the stage where AI is being used to supplement the work that analysts do, for example. So it makes them more efficient and helps them process more work. And some systems which are built on automating the detection of events and processing large amounts of data, they're also using AI on the back end to help with that detection, right? But we're not yet at the phase where people are losing jobs to AI. And we don't know if the AI technology will ever be trustworthy enough for that. Because when it comes to running cybersecurity operations, handling people's data in a way that is so sensitive that you have a contractual obligation to tell them when there's an attack against their infrastructure, which you monitor. You can't just kind of pass it off to an AI system and say, you know, it worked or it didn't work. Somebody has to take responsibility for it.
Mhm.
And it's just not mature enough for people to make that decision yet. So
Maybe
yeah,
in a few years, eh?
maybe, right? Maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So let me have a quick look at the chat. Security. Yes. And as to Vivian's point, AI itself is a huge security concern, right? I was attending a webinar last week by ISC2, and I heard a surprising statistic, which is that 30% of companies have had no internal discussion about the use of AI in their organization. So they have no controls in place to stop their employees from putting sensitive work stuff into ChatGPT, which may be breached later, which may have already been breached, right? Which is concerning because, like Vivian said, it can be its own attack vector. All right, so let's move on. Now, I'll put this question to you all. Feel free to raise your hand and let me know what you think. What does the word cybersecurity mean to you, or what does it bring to mind? Omer?
So I think of it as security for your computers and other connected devices. And also, if you're in an organization, then security for your business from hackers and from unwanted access to your files and unauthorized access. And for example, for hospitals and stuff, they want to keep their patient information confidential. So if they want to stop a breach from happening, or even if they want to protect their own network with their private network or their intranet, then security for that. So there's no unauthorized access to that.
Sure. Okay. And Noura?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is, I know you said we're gonna get more into this, but the CIA triad for me is just automatically what I think of.
Nice, great. And is it Sarakuli?
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
So for me, cybersecurity is online privacy. I would say that's such a huge factor that I think a lot of people are struggling with, which is people don't feel like their information is private or whatever they do online is private. So cybersecurity could bring an aspect of privacy to your online presence.
Great. And Demilola put in the chat protection of data from cyber attacks and breaches. And Anirudh put in the chat peace of mind. And Harun put in the chat prevention of critical information and security infrastructure breaches by foreign actors. Okay, those are all valid. What a lot of people think of first is, you know, the bad guys in the hoodie and the dark room and the computer screens and hacking and the code, right? But that's not really what it is. And we're going to learn more about it as we move on. But really, cybersecurity is about assessing threats and mitigating risks. And we have to take such a broad stance, right? We have to use a way to describe it, which is so sort of vague and not specific, because cybersecurity as responsibility, we're going to learn when we get to the CIA triad, it doesn't stop at stopping hackers, and it doesn't stop at preventing hackers, and it doesn't stop at preventing your employees from doing bad things, and it doesn't stop at making sure your services are online, right? It's like all this stuff together that we have to resort to describe it as assessing risks, assessing threats, and mitigating risks. Okay. We are going to practice assessing threats and mitigating risks in our first activity today, which we'll get to in a little bit. But first, we're going to do an overview of the course and some of the tools we'll use, including the virtual machines, which we talked about earlier. Okay. So let's talk about our daily routine. Every day when we log on to class, we're going to do a few things. We're going to talk about the objectives that we plan to complete during class. We'll do a lecture. Usually the lecture has demonstrations, right? Like I mentioned before, every once in a while, very rarely, but every once in a while, it'll be a demonstration where you have to follow along. Okay. But lecture with demonstrations, and then we'll do thought exercises or in-class skill builders, right? Which are just activities. Okay. We're going to split up in Zoom and breakout rooms where you can work together to complete an activity. And then project work, which we're going to talk more about in a second. So let's do a brief overview of the course from 10,000-foot view. Our course is broken up into several different modules. Okay. Our first module is about security fundamentals. The first 2 weeks of our program is, well, easier to some and harder for others because it's mostly conceptual. We're going to just kind of practice thinking like a cybersecurity professional. We're going to explore the career landscape. We're going to get an introduction to certifications in the space. Next we're going to find out about governance, risk, and compliance. And we're going to explore security from the organizational perspective. We're going to talk about how that affects the security controls and the technical details. Then we get into our second module from, I believe, week 3 onward. Okay. Or sorry, I should say our second unit, system administration from week 3 onwards. This is where we get technical, right? We're going to use our lab environments to complete activities. We're going to learn Linux. You're going to learn how to live on the command line. And you're going to hone your system administration skills in the several weeks that follow. We're going to do Linux and Windows. We're going to do Bash programming and a little bit of PowerShell. You're going to configure and audit servers, and you'll harden them against potential attackers. Our third unit, networks and network security. Networks are all about how computers talk to each other, right? So if you're going to secure them, you need to have a little bit of an understanding of how they're talking to each other in the first place. So we're going to talk about network configuration, network design, the ports and protocols that they use to talk to each other. We're going to talk about data communication. We're going to practice analyzing data packets using packet capturing tools. And we're going to investigate network security attacks, as well as perform system hardening for networking attacks. And we'll talk about cryptography. We also will sort of shim in there cloud virtualization and cloud security. Our fourth unit is offensive security. This is the really fun stuff, but it's also a little bit, this is where we sort of go up a level in difficulty. Okay. Now that we have learned a little bit of Bash and a little bit of Linux and some networking, we're going to explore offensive topics in security. We're going to talk about web architecture, web vulnerabilities, hardening techniques for them. We're going to do ethical hacking and penetration testing, and we're going to use Kali Linux and Metasploit, right? We're going to do all the Mr. Robot stuff. Okay. After that, we do defensive security. We're going to do security monitoring. We'll spend a few weeks learning about SIMs with Splunk. We're going to set up a security monitoring dashboards, alerts, reports, that kind of thing. You're going to gain an understanding of incident response and learn how to respond to a breach or an incident. And we'll spend some time on digital forensics, where we can learn how tools are used to recover deleted files or recover deleted data, hidden data, to solve a sample digital forensics case. So that's also pretty fun. And then our final unit for review and final projects. At this point, we'll have covered so much, so many different topics, right? So we'll get focused on certification and career prep and review. We're going to focus on Security Plus, but we're also going to introduce other relevant exams. We're also going to work on our networking skills, not computer networking, but human networking. and we're going to practice with behavioral and technical interviewing. Okay. So that is the 10,000-foot view of the course, all 6 months of it. And now let's dive in a little bit closer up with a magnifying glass and look at example activities. So for example, we may have one like an activity around cybersecurity policy and strategy. We look at like a case study, for example. We discuss how security teams communicate risks and strategies to their non-technical stakeholders. We could have another one where we analyze web traffic for suspicious activity, where it's a little more technical, right? We process the traffic logs to find evidence of malware being sent across the network. We could have another activity where we work on encryption and decryption systems. We're going to learn how they work and how to break them. We'll learn how to do things like web application hardening, where we do activities where you're hacking a web application, or you're proving that a web application is vulnerable to some kind of hack. And we'll also, using our tools like Kali Linux, spend a lot of time identifying vulnerabilities and learning how to exploit vulnerabilities. I like this type of activity and the unit that it's in a lot, because I'm not sure what to call it, this workflow of identifying a vulnerability and exploiting a vulnerability is going to last forever, right? It's so simple, and it's so fun, right? And it will kind of open up your mind to how breaches can happen, or how hacks can happen in the first place. Okay. So look forward to that, definitely. Aside from activities, we will have a couple CTFs, or class-long activities, throughout the course. CTF stands for Capture the Flag. Okay, so the idea is you get a team, and you have a board full of challenges. And if you complete the challenge, you'll have captured a flag, right? You put the flag in the little box, your team gets awarded points, and then you get to brag about you get to brag to everybody that you won the CTF, right? Okay. We'll do ones where the flags are on a Linux server. We'll do one where we have to investigate the network. We'll do a security center. So these are either CTFs or class-long activities. Okay. And finally, in addition to all of that, we will have 4 projects throughout the course. One of the projects is about securing a cloud app. Okay, so we're going to build a cloud application in Microsoft Azure, where it's going to be an application that hosts your cybersecurity blog. Okay, so we're going to learn about that, and we're going to learn how to use Azure to deploy something like that. Our second project will be an offensive security CTF, which we're going to sort of have a friendly competition over the course of 3 days, where you're going to use your offensive security skills to attack a fictional organization, exploit their vulnerabilities, capture some flags. After that, we have a project about building a monitoring solution, where you design a monitoring solution for a fictional organization to monitor their environment during a series of simulated attacks. And finally, the last project is the most open-ended one, and it's called BootCon. BootCon is the final project where you present researched projects that demonstrate one of the following: a vulnerability that you exploited in an IoT device, some code that you wrote or a program that you developed that can complete a cybersecurity task, or a demonstration of how a cybersecurity tool, which is new to us, that we didn't cover in class, can accomplish a specific goal. So it's super open-ended. It's very fun. You get to add your own flair to everything. We'll talk about it more as we get closer to it, but definitely look forward to that too. Okay. Any questions before we move on? Yeah, Harun?
Just wanted to ask, the syllabus and the courses that we're gonna, or the modules that we're gonna complete in this bootcamp, does that specifically give us the competence to do one part of the CompTIA Plus, such as Network Security Plus, or will it cover cloud, network, and other aspects as well that we can choose at the end of the day? Or is it going to require additional effort on our side hustle to learn more about them in order to appear in the CompTIA, for example, Cloud Plus? Because I know we're going to focus on the Security Plus, but if someone wants to do cloud security, does this bootcamp covers all aspect of the CompTIA certification?
Great
That
question.
narrows down. Yeah.
Yeah. So the bootcamp content and how it aligns with the different CompTIA certifications, it's a series of Venn diagrams where they all overlap a little more, a little less. The Security Plus is going to be the one with the most overlap. I would say doing this bootcamp will cover 80% the Security Plus curriculum, and then you'll need to study the last 20% yourself, right? Study and practice. If you do something like the Network Plus, maybe you're looking at like a 40 or 50% overlap, because we don't go that in depth on networking, right? Vivian took the Security Plus the most recently. Vivian, do you have anything you want to add to that? It's okay if not. Okay, no worries. We'll see if she has an opinion on it later. But yeah, so different levels of overlap between the course content and the exams. And like I said, I think the Security Plus has the most overlap. In general, what I recommend people, if somebody really wants to just be one and done, dedicate 6 months to the bootcamp, prepare to dedicate a 7th month to studying, and then get your certification, and it's done. I've seen a lot of students come through the bootcamp 6 months, and it takes them a year to do their certification, but it's because they didn't dedicate time to study. Like they spaced it out over the course of a year, which is fine. You can do that if you want, but if your goal is to get it done quickly, just prepare to dedicate a month to finishing up your studies to take the exam.
Just a follow-up statement. Just let me know if it's incorrect. If I finish the boot camp and I dedicate my time into it, I chose to do Cloud Plus security instead of Security Plus. It should prepare me for the bulk of it, and then I have to dedicate how much percentage time or months in order to learn more in details about cloud computing or cloud security.
So I haven't seen the Cloud Plus curriculum. I can't say about that specifically. What I'll say is the amount of cloud security that we learn is probably not that deep for a certification exam. I would say it's probably 30% of what you need for the exam, right? Okay, and Omer?
So I have a question about these projects. So are all these projects individual, or are they going to be group projects?
They will all be group projects.
Okay, and are we going to choose our own groups, or
Yes.
would you? Okay. And how many people in the group about?
It'll depend on the project.
Okay.
Never more than, I think, 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Balu?
Hi there, Omar. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Right. Just want to mention I've done Security Plus. I just want to share that it's more like a management certification. Nothing. That's what I felt. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I mean, because you mean it's not super technical
Yeah.
in depth, right? Yeah, for sure. A lot of the industry certifications are not very hands-on. Many of them, for example, the ICT ones, they're considered like management certifications. There are other certifying bodies that have more hands-on certifications, like the offensive security ones. Worth pursuing, but definitely a step up in difficulty. Okay. Balu, if you don't mind
Thanks.
asking, when did you take the Security Plus?
This was back in 2022.
Okay, gotcha. So that's pretty recent.
Yeah.
I may have questions for you at some point.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, moving on. Let's talk about some of the tools that we're going to use throughout the course. So one of the tools that we're going to use to perform our activities and homework and so on, are virtual machines, right? We're going to use virtual machines because they allow us to operate various operating systems and tools throughout the curriculum, okay? They let us run different operating systems. They let us download and install different machines onto our computer. In cases where we need more than one virtual machine, we can create a bunch of them and network them. Now, it used to be that you had to install a virtual machine on your computer, but we don't have to do that anymore because we have web-based solutions. We have 3 kinds of labs that we're going to use throughout this class. And I would say, I'm going to take a screenshot of this. Okay. And I'm going to put this in the O1 live channel. I'm going to put it in the resources channel so that everybody can remember it. We have web labs, which is called Guacamole. So that's what that green thing is. That's Guacamole. Okay. Web labs. We have Azure Cloud Lab Service, right? And the picture is this little scientific beaker. And then we have a personal Azure Cloud account, okay? And it's the sort of like a triangle, right? Or a letter A, maybe. 3 different types of labs. And up until the end of the course, sometimes people get confused about which lab is which is why I'm kind of hammering it home right now. The Guacamole lab is the web lab. The Azure Lab Service lab, we will sort of make sure to tell you when we're using that. And then the personal Azure Cloud account, we're really only going to use for 1 project and I think 1 homework, okay? Basically, starting in week 3, we're going to use the web lab, the Guacamole lab, to do system administration and Linux and networking, monitoring, programming, other things. We're going to use that from week 3 all the way to the end of the course. So we're constantly going to be using the Guacamole lab. Sometimes, so the Guacamole lab is 1 virtual machine. Sometimes we need more than 1. So we're going to use Azure Lab Services, okay? We're going to talk more about virtual machines later. Basically, the virtual machines are computers, simulated computers, that we can use to test different software and run different scenarios and that kind of thing. When we need a bunch of them, we use Azure Lab Services because it lets us build and deploy a predefined environment that the engineering team set up for us. And so we can snap our fingers and suddenly we have an environment with a hacker on it and vulnerable machines on it and a domain setup and these sorts of things, right? So we're going to use Azure Lab Services a few times throughout the course to get us into more intricate environments when we need more than 1 VM. Okay, so like I mentioned, because it lets us set up entire environments at once, we could use running multiple virtual machines in order to practice our offensive security, set up and monitor alerts for defensive security, and ensure data and resources are available, right? So in other words, redundancy. If you lose 1 VM, you could have another as a backup. Yeah, and I kind of already described for offensive security, you can have a hacker machine and some vulnerable machines. You obviously, I hope everybody knows this, but you can't go around hacking other people, even if it's for learning, right? So being able to deploy your own machines is obviously a necessity, okay? In terms of monitoring for defensive security, we need a machine that can monitor the network, and we need a machine to simulate an attack, right? So that's sort of an overview of the situations where we would use multiple virtual machines, and these are when we're going to use Azure Lab Services. And finally, we're going to use a personal Azure Cloud account. Harun, I'll get to you in just 1 sec. We're only going to use it a couple times. So we're going to use it for our cloud security module, and we're going to use it for our project 1. Okay. We will talk about this more when it becomes pressing as a matter of time. When you create your personal Azure account, it's going to ask you for your credit card. And that's not me trying to steal your card information and charge you $12 a month for something. That's Microsoft taking your card as insurance to identify you, right? So that you don't do nefarious things on their cloud platform. And so that if you use services which require payment, they can charge you. For most of you, you'll be eligible for a $200 credit. The only time you're not eligible is if you've already claimed it before. Okay. So $200 credit is more than enough to complete the boot camp, right? For me, I don't get the $200 credit. Over the course of 6 months, I spend about $30 on the Azure Personal Cloud, right? So it's nothing to worry about, really. As I said, we will talk about that sign-up process and everything to watch out for when we get to week 11. Okay. All right. And let's take some questions. So Harun.
I mean, to be honest, what I wanted to ask, that we don't even need to think about hacking other people's computer or anything. So we really don't have to jump so much in advance regarding getting another personal cloud system or virtual machines, because that's definitely shouldn't be the mindset. But I understand there are people who are ambitious, who wants to build their own projects, and then that time they might need to self-learn on how to do things so that they can find some vulnerabilities within their own devices or computer, for example, right? Also, the $200 credit, I don't think we will be instructed when the time comes to use that amounts and the
Yeah, you will be. Yeah. Okay. Balu, did you have a question, or was your hand up from earlier?
Sorry, my bad. I'll take it down.
No worries. And Astig?
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to clarify. So we're going to be doing this for 6 months, and then we have time to study, and we can take the exam, like you were saying, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months after. So it's not like we're taking the exam right after the 6 months.
When you graduate, you'll get the voucher to take the exam. That voucher is good for a year.
Okay.
So you can do it on your own time. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got a DM, somebody asking about if there's an emergency and you have to leave class. It happens. It's not a problem, really. If you miss something that's important, right? There's nothing in class really, which is a total necessity in terms of you missing something and then you're like screwed for the homework. It won't happen, right? So anything that you miss in class because of an emergency, just DM myself or one of the assistant instructors on Slack, and we'll get you sorted out and caught up. Okay. So no need to worry about that. All right, let's move on and finish these up, and then we'll take a break. Okay. So in terms of resources, you have a lot of resources available to you for additional learning and review. You have your student module syllabus. They contain weekly overviews of the module. They tell you how to set your expectations, and they provide additional support and material for continued learning. Your student guides, which I showed you on GitLab earlier, right? That's your version of the lesson plan. You can use that to follow along with me and to sort of rewind if you miss something I said, right? And finally, the slides for the same reason, right? If you miss something I said or you want to see what we just talked about, having a copy of the slides available to you is very helpful. Okay. Let's briefly talk about online learning, and then we'll take our break right after that. Okay. So we are conducting the bootcamp over Zoom primarily, right? We need to use tools to facilitate and optimize this learning environment, right? You're going to be collaborative in your work with each other. You're going to spend a lot of time together on activities. And the course is really designed to be a sort of collaborative learning community, right? Our first week, we're going to spend making sure that you're all comfortable where you are and comfortable with each other. So we're going to talk about some best practices for conducting the course in this online environment. So first things first, we've already kind of done this, get to know your classmates and instructors. So the more you put into the course, the more you'll get out of it. But you'll get more out of the course if you become part of this community, right? If we can show up to office hours before class every day and talk about the weather or laugh about something that happened at work, we're going to have a much better time together, right? Social connection can be difficult through a screen, but there are other ways to get to know each other. You should participate in class and in the Slack space. You don't have to get very personal, but you can share your specific goals or interests. Now, I'll show you in Slack, there is a channel called Student Introductions Channel, and I see a lot of people posting. If you scroll up, you see Sarir has shared a sort of template, right? So you can introduce yourself and get to know each other, right? I'll sort of post my own, okay? It's just pictures of my dog for now, but we'll get to know each other some more as class goes on. Okay. So number one, get to know each other. Number two, treat class time like you would if you were in a lecture hall. So try to make the area distraction free. If you can go to a quiet room, turn off your phone and ask other people to avoid bothering you, that's great. I know the last one is not always possible, and I understand, right? If you've got kids or family or, what have you, I understand. But do your best to avoid distractions so that you can really sort of lock in and give us your full attention. We talked about this already, but budget time for classwork, challenge reviews, challenge assignments, and reviews, right? Like I mentioned before, the kiss of death for the boot camp is not being not good with technology or not knowing how to code. It's not being able to manage your time. If you allow the work to pile up, you're going to be staring down the barrel of 50 hours of work in 2 weeks at the end of the class, right? So take care of things as soon as they're assigned, as soon as you can. Schedule time throughout the week for your coursework. Set aside some time each week for studying and completing challenges. And if you pace it out this way, it's not going to be as overwhelming. Now, finally, we'll talk about some Zoom best practices. Not finally, we've got one more after this, but we're going to talk about some Zoom best practices, right? Always mute, which again, everybody's great at so far. If you're not presenting, please keep your mic on mute so that you don't distract other people. If possible, include your first and last name on your Zoom tile, right? You can rename yourself. For me personally, I would like if everybody's name was first name, last name, rather than last name, comma, first name, because sometimes I read one way and then another way, and then I'm calling people the wrong name, right? So that would be really helpful. Keep your video on when you can. Again, like I said, with distractions, it's not always possible. But again, try to sort of treat it as if you're in a lecture hall and be engaged. And if you feel like you're in a lecture hall and your professor would have a problem with what you're doing, while your camera's off, then do the right thing and turn your camera on and be attentive, right? Number 4, raise your hand to ask for questions. That's great. You've already all been doing that so far. You can use Slack for questions. You can use the Zoom chat for questions. The only caveat to using the Zoom chat is that after the meeting, you can only sort of recover that chat by watching the recording. And sometimes it's easier to have a Slack conversation because you've got like the search bar in Slack and it's all in one place, rather than trying to remember which class you asked a question in, going to the recording to find it, right? So Slack is probably the best place to leave a written question. And finally, use headphones with a microphone. Yeah, I mean, use the Zoom audio testing feature to make sure that your audio is clear and normalized where possible. Sometimes somebody's got like a loose cable, or they've got like a loud fan running and they unmute themselves and it's like an instant flashbang to the ears, right? So let's try to avoid that where we can. And the last thing I'll add is you may be tempted to have one device for Zoom and another device for doing work. I would avoid that if you can, because the amount of times we've had somebody, in the class and they need help with something and we say, okay, share your screen and let's walk through it together. And they're like, I can't because it's on another device, right? So it can throw a wrench into things. Okay, so do your best to learn how to manage Zoom in a way that allows you to do both on one machine. Okay, and really quickly, let's talk about Slack. I'm sure you've all seen Slack by now. It's our online communication tool, which is like a forum and an instant messenger and email all in one. A lot of people use it, and you're going to use it hopefully every day for the next 6 months, right? We can use it for code snippets, announcements, daily overview of class, right? Additional reading links that we share, okay? The Zoom link is usually in Slack every day, by the way. So if you don't want to have to go into BCS to join Zoom, you can find everything you need usually in Slack. Okay? You can use Slack in your browser, or you can download the app. Either way is fine. And the only thing I'll add to this is use the thread function in Slack to keep things free of clutter, right? So if we're in the live online channel and you want to ask a question, I'll zoom in here so it's easier to see. And I want to ask a question to Omer, right? If I type it down here and I say, Omer, what's up? It's just going to go to the bottom and it gets lost, right? And it creates clutter. So highlight the message you want to respond to and click this little button here that says reply in thread, okay? And now it gets collapsed underneath. So it keeps the channel neat for everybody else and it keeps your messages organized, right? So use the thread feature where you can. And the last thing, which I must caution everybody about is, yes, ask the instructional staff questions on Slack, definitely. But ask the question when you make first contact. I can't tell you how many times I'm out on the weekend or whatever, and I get a message from somebody and it just says, hi, Omar. Which is great, hi. I don't mind. But what they wanted to do was ask a question. But now they have to wait for me to reply. And then I have to wait for them to reply with their question. And then we can get around to addressing the question, right? So send your question with the hello message, right? Get it all out of the way at once. That way we speed up the back and forth. Okay. We have dedicated channels for different things like the live channel, ask the class channel, announcements channel. It's all mostly self-explanatory, so I won't dwell on it, right? Definitely keep an eye on the announcements channel because important things will be in there, right? We use, where is it? We are using the O1 Live channel for most important things, okay? So keep an eye on the O1 Live channel, right? We may introduce other channels as it goes on, but I'll let you know about them if we need them. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we're going to come back and get started on our first activity. Okay. And yes, you can use Slack on your mobile phone. So the time on my screen is 8:07. Let's come back at 8:23.
Having a long distance.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, we don't have anything scheduled, or we don't have any resources dedicated to it. But yeah, if you can find people near you, then you guys can work something out.
Oh, okay, great. Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, let's start talking about our first activity for the day. And like we said, this week is largely conceptual. We're trying to start thinking like cybersecurity professionals. If we recall, the main task of cybersecurity is assessing threats and mitigating risks. Doing that can often require creativity and thinking outside the box. So what we're going to do is we're going to divide up into breakout rooms, sorry, where you're going to be in a room with several other students, and you will all work through this activity together for 15 minutes. And here's how activities go. So every day on Slack, you will see in the O1 Live channel a message usually from Alex, that is an overview of the class and it includes a link to the activities. So this one is called Assessing Threats. If you click this link, it'll take you to GitLab and it will have the activities, to-do list or, everything you need to complete the activity. So what I want everybody to do is find this link in the O1 Live channel, open it up in GitLab, and prepare to be invited to a breakout room, okay? Where you're going to work through this activity with other students, okay? So, Victoria, please go ahead and open the breakout rooms. Okay, so everybody will get a prompt that says you're invited to a breakout room. Just click accept or move or whatever it says, and you'll be sent over. And for the TAs, we can float around and see how people are doing. But I think it's okay if they use this time to get acquainted with one another and just kind of figure things out since it's their very first activity.
Riley? Okay, let's go.
Chris, are you with us?
Well, so these two means that they are probably not behind their machine, so they haven't seen the prompt yet. So.
I'm gonna join 5 to 9 to see if people are talking, okay?
Thanks, Victoria.
The 9 onwards.
Is Vivian here today?
Yeah, she's in one of the breakout rooms, I think.
Okay, all right, okay. All right, let me just go around and see what's happening.
Thanks.
Now I got to go back to the breakout room.
All right, folks, welcome back. So, first things first, I apologize for the confusion, although it is a little bit normal for the first activity to be a learning curve, right? So the idea is you have the link to the activity, and we send you to the breakout rooms to work with each other through the activity outline, right? And usually everything you need to do the activity is in there. So as we go through the course and you do some more of those, it's going to be like second nature, right? This time we did have the TAs come around and sort of point you in the right direction, which we'll do with other activities too, but you'll get to the point where you won't really need it most of the time. Okay. Ideally, what we'll have is somebody will sort of volunteer to share their screen that you can use as like a whiteboard or a scratch pad for your group's thoughts. Okay. So that activity, like we talked about, was all about learning to think like a security professional and thinking about the potential risks involved with that scenario. So do any of the groups want to share something that they came up with? You can raise your hand. Omer?
Yes, so the scenario was that we find a USB laying on the ground. The first question was when you plug it into a computer, it starts executing a code. So how is the USB able to do that? So we came up with the answer that there must be an auto run program on it that when you insert it, the computer reads the USB and it auto runs the software that's installed on it, and that's how it runs the program. And for the second one, it said, why can't our computer stop the drive from running? So we came up with because the code is written in such a way that there's no way to interrupt it, and also that it runs so fast that by the time we try to stop it, it's already executed. It's already run its course. And for how we might defend against this, we all agreed that never pick up an unknown USB, and even if you pick it up, never insert it into your computer. And if you if you absolutely have to do that, then make sure that auto run is off on your computer, and you run a virus antivirus software on it, and you also make sure your OS is updated so that it has the security in place against such things.
Okay, cool. One thing I want to mention about a question like this is there's a lot of ways where the technical details can be more accurate or less accurate depending on what you come up with. I don't expect anybody's response right now to account for things like, oh yeah, the operating system should disable autorun.exe, that kind of thing. It's just a thought exercise, so don't be intimidated by that. Okay. Thank you, Omer. Let's go to Anirudh.
Being into security, I think to mitigate all the risk, we should open the USB in a virtual machine rather than using our own personal computer to see the files. I think that is the best way to do it.
Okay, sure. Great. Arishi?
Hi. So, I feel like in the computer, they might not have enough security settings enabled. For example, like no password before you, like when you put the USB in, and the USB could contain a virus, so it could be really threatening, or it can contain like a malware. So you should get antivirus and anti-malware software. And also just extra security training. And if multiple computers are kind of on the same like network, that could be a problem as well, because the data from one computer could get like hacked, and then it could also contain passwords for other computers on the same network, or it could increase the access of like
Sure.
get to the other computers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it could serve as a foothold. Great. I think the most pressing thing was the human factor, right? The training, right? Don't plug in strange USBs. Okay, we'll do two more, and then we're going to move on just for the sake of time. And I'll ask everybody else to put theirs in the chat so we can look at them. Okay, so Shad.
Okay, so well, myself and I guess Abdul Rahman and Banu, my apologies. What we came up with was what may end up happening is, yes, you have your auto run, or you may even have it turned off and you say, you know what, maybe the USB was handed to you by a coworker and maybe you trust the source, so to say, right? So you take it, you plug it in, you decide to run it and it starts going nuts. It may be because the file was designed and probably written as like an executive file. And if I understand correctly, an executive file more or less just gets to work. The computer sees it as a critical file for the computer to actually function, so it just runs it. So that I guess would solve one and or answer 1 and 2 is USB drive has a file that the computer recognizes it needs to run, so it runs it automatically. And because it runs automatically, because the computer demands it, you can't really stop it, right? And we kind of came up with like almost like a systemic way of solving the issue is to have like encryption. So a mandatory encryption on any USBs that would have to run through your computer system, your network at work or whatever it is, and that maybe you have a superior that would, need to see the USB or the files first, then they would encrypt it, then it would be allowed to run on the network, right? And for that encryption, you would have a key that would go through certain gateways or something like that in order to, once it passes through all of those, then it'll let it run. So you have that one person acting as a security check to prevent malicious software from even trading hands between trusted sources.
It's interesting. When we learn more about encryption, we can revisit this and see if there's a patent there.
So not original ideas.
No, I mean, if you can write a patent.
Well, okay.
But anyway, yeah, so coming up with novel solutions to these problems is interesting. And right now, our biggest roadblock is that we don't have all the technical knowledge about how does USB work? How does an operating system work? Right? How do all these layers that are involved? So the key to this situation for us right now is the human factor, right? Step 1, don't plug in a strange USB, right? There is technically a correct answer to these questions. And so I scheduled a message to be sent at 9:30 in the resources channel, which is going to link to the Wikipedia page about this kind of attack. Okay, so after class is done, you'll be able to read about the solution, quote unquote, right? Okay, let's move on. So a harmless USB, what if it was a mini keyboard, right? Keyboard emulation. The computer registers it as a keyboard, not as an auto run file. but as a keyword allowing to kick off without restriction. It doesn't look like anything harmful. It doesn't even appear like anything harmful because you don't even get like a pop-up saying that something is executing, right? It just plugs in and seemingly nothing happens. Maybe a terminal blinks by if you catch it in the split second, right? But as I said, the Wikipedia page is going to be linked in the resources channel, and you can read more about that attack. Okay. We're going to move on and talk about the CIA triad. Now, the CIA triad is the first sort of major cybersecurity concept we're going to learn about, and it's the cornerstone of information security. The CIA triad highlights three major cornerstones of InfoSec: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So let me ask you, what do each of these mean? Who wants to tell me what confidentiality means? Ali?
You have access to some sensitive data, and your responsibility is to make sure that they are locked. I mean, nobody should have access unless some department or people would have access. So basically, I can give you an example from someone from HR, for example. They do have sensitive information such as date of birth, social insurance number, banking information, address. Their responsibility is to keep that as confidential and not share this information to anyone else.
Great. That's a very complete definition, actually. So confidentiality is about the state of keeping or being kept secret or private. Okay, so as Ali was mentioning, the confidentiality is all about ensuring that sensitive information doesn't reach unauthorized people. So an example of a confidentiality attack could be uploading private photos or communications onto the internet, exposing credit card numbers online. Confidentiality comes down to the principle of need to know. Data or information should only be made available to people who need to access it. We enforce confidentiality through encryption and authentication. That last point, this is very important for your exam, because this is one of those questions that you'll get on the exam, where if you see confidentiality as an option and the question says, encryption and authentication, you know what the answer is right away, right? So keep that in mind. Confidentiality, we ensure using encryption and authentication. Who wants to tell me what they think integrity is? Dami?
I believe it's making sure confidential data is not being tampered with.
Great, yeah. So technically, whether or not the data is confidential or not doesn't actually matter. But you're right. The data which has integrity is data that's honest, whole, undivided, hasn't been tampered with. Okay. So integrity of information means it hasn't been modified but by unauthorized people. So an attack on integrity would be intercepting money transfers and changing the amount, right? Adding a little bit on the top and then stealing it, right? Altering the grades at school, okay? Those kind of attacks can be prevented using hashing to make sure that the data hasn't been tampered with, whether in transit or at the client or at the server, okay? So the same way that encryption ensures confidentiality, we use hashing to ensure integrity. So again, that's another one that you should take note of, okay? And finally, for the A in our triad, availability. Who wants to tell me what they think of availability? Omer?
I think availability refers to when you need to access the data, it is there. So that it's on, if, for example, if it's on a server and you need it, then you should have access to the server or wherever the file or the data is stored.
Great, right? So availability is the quality of being able to be used or obtained. So availability concerns occur when operating system or equipment or data isn't functioning properly and somebody who needs the data can't get it, right? So if I'm somebody at work and I need to access a certain data set on a database to do my job, and some part of that process is not working, then there's an availability incident occurring, right? Or if you're a customer and the CRA website goes down and you can't file your taxes, right? There's an availability incident ongoing. Okay. Usually we just call that an outage, right? But that's a problem concerning the availability of the data or the service. So an example of an attack could be somebody purposely taking down a web-connected generator to disable a power supply, using a denial of service attack to bring down a website, right? And the way that we ensure availability is taking backups of data or deploying redundant infrastructure. So that is, if there's a failure on, on the server side, for example, and one set of servers goes down, you can fail over to another set where you can still access the website, for example. Okay. We will revisit these, and as we go through the course and we learn more about the technical aspects which uphold these, you'll sort of see how everything in the end flows back to the CIA triad. Okay, so we tried out our first activity, and you kind of understand now that you get the activity link and you work through the activity with your breakout group. We're going to try again. We're going to do a 15-minute activity where you're going to analyze a variety of brief scenarios and identify which element of the CIA triad each situation is concerned with. Okay, so again, let's look at the Slack. We go to the live channel, and here we're looking at the CIA triad activity. So we click the link, and what we're going to work through is this, right? So analyze the scenarios below and choose one of three, which CIA triad, which element of the CIA triad each is concerned with. Okay, so there's 10 here. You'll take 15 minutes to work through it, and then we'll come back and we'll review the answers together. All right. So let me have a look at the breakout rooms. I think they're still, yeah, they're still there. So I'm going to open them up, and after 15 minutes, you'll be teleported back here. All right, folks, welcome back. So in that activity, you were categorizing each of those security scenarios based on which of the aspects of the CIA triad they relate to. So let's go through them together. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read the scenario, and I will pick somebody to tell me which answer their group came up with. And it's okay if you didn't get it right. We'll just ask the class to see if somebody had a different opinion. That's all. Okay. So number one, a hospital only allows authorized healthcare personnel within one department to access patient personal identifiable information. When employees move to another department, they lose access. Can Manohar tell me what the answer is? Is it confidentiality, integrity, or availability?
Yeah, so our group, we went with confidentiality because at that point it's who's being allowed to access the information and the data, and then obviously after, if they leave, then they prevent that person from having the access.
Beautiful, right? That person is no longer authorized to access that data. Okay. Number two, technology firm maintains an alternate site that's running at all times. Operations can be moved there in the event of a major disaster. How about Dummy?
Our group went with availability for that.
Perfect, right? You got to keep things running so that the data or the service are available to the people that need it. Number three, employees need key cards in order to enter their company offices. How about Emmanuel? I think you're muted.
Sorry.
That's okay.
We got C for that.
Confidentiality. Perfect, right? Okay, number 4, company hashes their data files to monitor whether information has been tampered with. Alagiri.
It's integrity.
Integrity, right? And perfect. So whenever you see hash, you know it's usually related to integrity. Okay. You should still watch out for trick questions, but in general, hashes relate to integrity. Okay. Number 5, only authorized personnel at a company have a right access to certain files. Everybody else only has read access. How about Sam or Samia?
Yes, this one we actually got stumped on in the beginning. We thought it was something else, but after kind of looking through it, we decided that it would be integrity.
Beautiful.
Just because of the difference between the write access and the read access.
Great. Yep. So it's integrity. Okay, number 6, a company employs redundant servers, meaning that the systems are duplicated. If there's a malfunction, one will step in for another. We'll go with Matthew. D, in case there are several.
Yeah, our group with availability.
Awesome, right? Same thing. Services have to keep running in case people need them. Number 7, company's network infrastructure uses load balancers, which distribute the load of tasks like file requests and data routing to a variety of servers. That way, no single device is overburdened. And how about Kevin?
Availability for that one as well.
Awesome, right? So whether it's redundancy or load balancing the infrastructure, keeping the service online and healthy is part of availability. Okay. Number 8, a cyber criminal uses an on-path attack to intercept wireless traffic from users. Let's go with Alex R.
Sorry, can you reread yours? Because ours was a man-in-the-middle attack.
I think they may have switched the terminology, but it's the same.
Confidentiality.
Awesome, right? Intercepting traffic implies that they're trying to spy on or snoop the data that's being sent across the wire or over the air. And so that would be them sort of reading information that they're not privy to. So it's confidentiality. Number 9, cyber criminal cracks a hashed message and changes its contents. Let me hear from Anshul. Anshul, you're unmuted, but I think your microphone might be
Yeah,
hardware.
sorry.
Yeah.
We put integrity for that one because it's changing the contents of data.
Awesome. Right? So the content of the data has been tampered with. It's integrity. And finally, number 10, a cyber criminal launches a DDoS attack, which floods a website with unwanted traffic from multiple computers, taking it offline. Let's go with Arushi.
We put that as availability because
Great.
it's not available.
Perfect. Right? Awesome job, folks. Any questions about the activity before we wrap things up? Okay.
Yeah.
Harun?
For number 8, I have a question. I put it as availability first because one of the server is being overloaded with all the information. So that's the vulnerability that the cyber criminal is using to attack. So the solution is to just not put everything in one place, having backup so that if one of the site or server is being problematic by the cyber criminal, they have another one.
Sorry, which one were you? Number 8
Number
or
8.
number?
Yeah, number 8. Number 8, if I'm kind of confused.
This one?
The cyber criminal thing?
Man-in-the-middle attack to intercept wireless traffic?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, when intercepting wireless traffic just means that they're catching the radio waves coming off of a computer, okay? And there's nothing in there really about overloading the system. they're just taking something that wasn't meant for them, really, right? So that's why it's confidentiality, because they're trying to process somebody else's data. Okay, Omer.
Yes, so our group was also debating number 8, and we also came up with confidentiality, but we are also thinking about that it could also be an integrity issue, because if the man in the middle changes the information and then transmits that, because it's he or she is intercepting the data, right?
Absolutely.
So if they change it and transmit it to the place where it's supposed to go, then it could become an integrity issue.
Yes, for sure.
Okay.
Emmanuel. I think you're muted again.
The same thing for us. For number 8, we were thinking that it comes under integrity as well, but because since the data is being intercepted and could be changed.
Yeah. So yeah, we have to make some assumptions, and to say that it's confidentiality, we're just assuming that the hacker doesn't want to change the data. But if they wanted to, and they could, then yes, it would be integrity, probably as well as confidentiality.
Right. Okay. Yep. That's it.
All right, folks.
Thank
So great job. Thank you all for the smooth launch class tonight. I hope everybody had a good time. Next class, which is Wednesday, we're going to resume our learning about Cybersecurity 101. We're going to talk more about mitigating risks and assessing threats by evaluating specific attacks and vulnerabilities of users, web applications, servers, and databases. One thing I want to mention to everyone before so what we do is at 9:30, it's office hours and you're free to leave. Or whenever I say the end, you're free to leave, and it's all good. If you want to stay for office hours and ask questions, then office hours are until 10 p.m. My only request for you is that if you get yourself in a breakout room with a TA and they're helping you do your homework or fix an issue or troubleshooting or whatever, please be mindful of their time. And if you see the clock hits 10, cut it short and let them go back to their families, right? I got a question in Zoom about how many hours to spend on the course because, life is busy. So I'll return to that briefly. The slide said 20 hours for study outside of class. To me personally, I think that's an overestimation. Like, that's 20 hours is a lot. To put it into perspective, we spend together in class about 12 hours a week. So it's 12 hours of you listening to me talk and doing the activities just in class, 12 hours. I think, based on my experience here doing the boot camp and seeing people progress through it, I think that you can do the weekly homework each week in about 4 hours if you're focused. Okay. So rather than 20 hours outside of class, it'll be 4 hours for homework. Let's say you want to accommodate for project work time as well. Like if you got a group project, you got to bring people in and together, maybe you spend another 4 hours on that. Okay. That brings your total time, including class, not outside of class, to 20 hours a week. I think that will cover you for the duration of the boot camp. Okay. Of course, play by ear. If you find you're struggling as we move along, you'll have to spend more time. One thing that happens is, especially when we get into the technical stuff like Linux, you can run up against a wall and spend hours and hours troubleshooting and figuring things out. And that's great, except that we have only so much time on this earth. And I don't want you to spend your whole weekend messing with a Linux assignment, right? If you feel like you've really hit a wall, just ask us for help, right? Because I think your time is more valuable than that, right? I want you to, in some way, I want you to struggle a little bit so that you learn, right? But not more than is actually necessary and conducive to the time that should be spent on it, right? So just keep that in mind. And the last piece was studying for the certification. The reason I said 6 months for the boot camp and give yourself a 7th month to study was because the 6 months for the boot camp, where you spend 20 hours a week in the boot camp and doing homework and projects, that's going to be tough for 6 months. If you go from that back to doing, normal work hours and no boot camp stuff, you kind of lose the habit of keeping this focused time to work on things. So instead of going back to 0 time spent studying cybersecurity each week and then trying to find the motivation to study for your certification, just tell yourself now and prepare yourself now that after 6 months of doing 20 hours a week, I'm going to do 1 month, 10 hours a week, half as much time, where I sit down and I study the Security Plus. It's going to be so easy for you, right? You're going to be able to get through the curriculum and study the certification and pass, and then you can move on to whatever you want to do with it, right? Just my recommendation, but just something I wanted to share before we move on. Okay. So with that said, that's all from me. Again, stick around till 10 if you want to ask questions, but you're free to log off. And if you do, have yourselves a great night.
Thank you, Omar. Have a great night.
Thanks, Harry.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Right.
Good night, Omar.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. So I'll get through everybody's questions who had their hands raised, but really quickly, I wanted to respond to Demi in the chat. I would say, Demi, if you are going for the Security Plus exam, the bootcamp content is like 75 to 80% of what you need for the exam.
Right.
So the other 20% you'll have to use the CertMaster tool to study.
Okay.
But it's very manageable.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So can I jump in here as well?
Yeah, for sure.
So for Security Plus and stuff, you'll have to actually memorize the concepts too. It's not an open book one, so you probably want to dedicate some time to actually memorize and understand the concepts. There's also a section where it's like, I guess, like the performance-based questions. So you'll actually be expected to kind of do like a little bit of technical work or just answer, for example, like firewalls and ports like that.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you so much.
And when we get to that part in the course near the end where we unlock the CertMaster tool together, we'll actually look at some examples of that. And so you can figure out what that's like before jumping into the exam.
All right. So we're going to get some examples of the scenario-based questions.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Questions from Zoom. Shaza?
So I had a question regarding CompTIA exam as well. So I do understand that you mentioned and you did that the fact that the course does prepare you for the test. Now, as much as I've researched into it, I've read in a couple of places that a 2-year experience is recommended to give the exam. For any of us, for instance, for me, who has no background in IT or computers or like coming from a background of architecture, just this course and studying a full-time 7th month, is that good enough? And should an attempt be made without any experience, or should a few months of experience would be a good idea before attempting the exam?
Yeah. So would it be nice if you had a few months of experience before attempting the exam? Yes, it would be nice. I think that's very difficult to make a reality because it's hard to get let's say an internship with no experience, right? Regarding the 2-year recommendation from CompTIA, part of that, in my opinion, is because when you work in the field, you learn a lot, but it's elongated, right? Because you do your day-to-day tasks and you only learn so much more at sort of larger periods of time, right? Whereas for us, 6 months of the boot camp, we compress so many domains of knowledge into that 6 months that I feel that we cover most of the curriculum. I would say the other part of that is when it comes to the certifications, when it says you should have 2 years of experience, or you get to the ISC2 exam and it says you should have 5 years of experience, and we're going to make sure that you actually have it, right? The idea is that you pass the test, but are you actually qualified to be Security Plus certified, or are you actually qualified to be CISSP certified? Because the Security Plus is an entry-level certificate, entry-level certification, I really wouldn't fret about the 2-year recommendation.
Okay.
I do think the boot camp will set you up sufficiently.
Okay.
Vivian, did you have anything you want to add to that? I got the thumbs up.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of lost track of what order people raised their hands in. Let's go with Benjamin.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. The first one is involving Linux again. I was wondering if how much I should take on my own time to actually learn Linux, and what are your thoughts on Linux? Because lots of the teachers I've had in college, as soon as they learned Linux and got used to it, they actually swapped from Windows to it. So I was wondering if you did as well, or what you kind of had planned.
I prioritize convenience in a lot of ways. So I haven't swapped to it personally, but I use it for work and I use it for development environments because I think it's very good at that.
Okay. And then my second question, it was with the first module and the second module. They're both open currently, and I was wondering when you think we should actually start working on them. Or like, should it be after the 3 classes or after?
Yeah, just
today?
wait for after the 3 classes. No need
Okay.
to, yeah, get a head start.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Have a good night.
You too, thanks. Emmanuel?
Yeah, I got a question in terms of the CompTIA test. How effective is the study guides for it? You know, the one that it's available. You know, you can buy them. Are they sufficient enough to kind of guide you?
Like the official study guide?
Yeah, like, you know, there's some study guides that, you know, they give you a sort of a idea what sort of questions. I don't know if it's close enough or maybe it's too easy. I don't know. But
Some of the, so since all the study guides are different, it's hard to say.
Mhm.
The nice part is because we get the CertMaster tool that can sort of replace the study guide because it can walk you through all the different parts of the curriculum and test you on them.
So the study guide won't help or will help?
It'll help insofar as you have the curriculum in your hands in another form that you can like read while you're on the bus or whatever you're doing, right?
Right. Okay. And I heard it was adapted too, so it gets harder as you get the questions, the easy questions out of the way, and then it gets harder.
Yeah, exactly.
All right then. Thanks so much.
No
Thank you.
problem.
Bye.
Nana?
Hi, so I just wanted to ask about the modules. So I heard you saying something about we should start doing them only after 3 classes. Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, like, why was that? Why is that the case?
Usually the homework is a combination of the activities we did throughout 3 classes. So if you start it early, you will probably spend more time confused than being able to actually work on the activity. You know what I mean? So I think the most efficient way to do it is start after the 3rd day. If you want to pre-read it, that's a great idea actually, so that you can look out for the key topics throughout the week. But yeah, in my opinion, you don't need to take a head start.
Okay.
Thomas?
Hey there.
Just a question. Do you have any book recommendations or YouTube channels or anything for us to like watch in our spare time? Anything you'd recommend, or specifically books though?
Specifically books, I have been reading what's his name? It's right there. Ross Anderson's security engineering book. A guide to building dependable distributed systems. And it's really good in that he tells a lot of stories, and he's got a lot of experience in all these fields where you can learn about it from like the high level where he describes it as a story, and he digs into the technical. It is very dense though. Like, to be honest, with my experience, I still have trouble keeping up sometimes. But it's worth looking into. I would say, do you have any experience with cyber or computer science or anything?
I've had a job where I've had to do very techie things.
Okay.
I'd call myself, the network admin of my house, right? Like I do, but self-taught.
Yeah.
But
have you heard of Darknet Diaries?
No.
Okay. Podcast. They tell stories about historic hacks, news, stuff like that. It's a great series on, I think I listened to it on Spotify. Introduces you to new concepts, makes you curious about existing concepts, that kind of thing. Really good listen.
All right. And what was that book you recommended?
It's called Security Engineering by, I forgot his name again. Ross Anderson.
Ross Anderson. Okay. And another question, did you cry at the end of Mr. Robot?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, it was so good. All right. Yeah, thank you. I'll check out that podcast.
Cool. Arian?
Hey man, how's it going?
Good.
I actually had like a similar question. I was gonna ask if you know any like podcasts that I can listen to for like cybersecurity and stuff. So I can get more familiar with like the industry language and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's another big thing is the industry language. When we go through the course, I try to do my best to take the textbook speech and say like, okay, we're talking about a hashed data packet, but people don't really call it that. I think in the same way, Darknet Diaries is good because it's just two people talking, so you can see the way they colloquially refer to things, aside from just the technical jargon.
Okay. And one thing that I just want to clarify, is the voucher that you get from completing this course, is that separate from the certificate that's like tied to the U of T?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you get the U of T certificate, and then afterwards you can do you get a voucher for like a CompTIA certificate.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So you get 2 in total. Okay. Yeah, that's all I wanted to ask. Thank you very much.
Cool. Yeah, no worries.
Right, have a good one.
You too. Harun?
I just wanted to ask, do we have to read anything, other materials beside what will be posted in Slack as well as BCS portal and GitLab? That should be because that in itself is a lot to study. And on top of that, if you find anything that's useful or important to read to prepare us for each module at the end of the module itself, would be greatly appreciated if you can highlight that on Slack. And any other other materials that complements each module that we should know and that can help us ace the CompTIA certification exam.
For sure.
So that would be greatly appreciated if you can do that. And the second thing is that is the voucher that we're going to get for CompTIA, is it going to be just one time? We can just write the exam once, and if we fail, can we retry it within the same voucher, or it has to be separate exam or separate?
I'll have to double check. It's either you get one retry or you have to pay for your next attempt. I think more likely you have to pay for the next attempt, but I'll double check.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll leave now. Thanks. Take care.
Sure. Thanks. Sebastian?
Hi, just a quick question. In regards to the GitLab, there is no assignments that need to be essentially submitted from there, right? All we have to focus, all we do is just basically on the actual portal. That's all we got to worry about. Okay,
That's right.
simple question. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Have a good night.
You too. And Hassan.
Hi, I just have a question. I'm trying to figure out if this course is good for me because I'm preparing to take the CISP exam. So I need to decide it before the deadline to drop the course.
Yeah.
If this is good, or should I look for another course, or just how much is covered from the 8 domain that we have to cover in the exam?
Yeah, I would say for the CISSP, this course will be relatively surface level. There have been students. I have had a student come through in the last cohort who did his CISSP and used the bootcamp as a sort of way to sharpen some things and relearn some other concepts he'd lost over the years. But yeah, I mean, you know, the CISSP is an intermediate management level certification, and this is an entry level course. So I can't promise anything.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. I'll open it to the TAs though. Does anybody else have opinion about that?
Yeah, I do not think if you're looking to study for CISSP, this would deliver the goods for you. I don't think so.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
And Shot.
Hey, sorry, me again. So if I understood correctly, so Sorare is who I would speak to if I needed help, I guess, understanding and navigating, or even just finding BCS and Slack, right? Is there any other resource, like some YouTube videos or maybe some other links, maybe in Google that would, I could read through during, let's say, my break at work or something that would help me understand how to navigate these things? Because I'm getting kind of lost, even just when you guys were posting those, the groups or whatever, I couldn't find anything. So.
Okay. So what we'll do is the easiest way, the fastest way for everybody is during office hours. If you get in a breakout room with a TA for 10 minutes, you'll be able to sort it out with them guiding you, showing you how to access things.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I mean, Sorare can help you if you have a problem with those, but if it's just like getting acquainted, I don't think it. Yeah, I don't think it's sort of her wheelhouse.
Right. Okay, so you said the office hours are 45 minutes before and after class, right?
Yeah, like right now until 10. If you want a breakout room, I can open one and somebody can help you out.
Sure, yeah, I might as well crush this and figure it out as soon as possible.
That's the spirit. I'll just open out a bunch of them in case people need them. And do I have a volunteer from the TAs to help Shot out?
I can help.
Thanks, Victoria.
Which breakout room?
I will just move both of you into one.
Thanks.
There we go. And Harun?
Me again, small question. When do we have to focus on the CISSP certification? Is it after like
That's when you
I
have
don't know
5 years of
anything
work
about it.
experience.
Okay, that's good. Then I don't want to think about that yet. Thank you. Yeah.
No worries.
Thanks.
All right, folks, I'm going to stop the recording. I may turn off my